It's past midnight on a mountain the local Mansi people call Kolit, which means dead mountain, and you are one of 9 experienced hikers zipped into a single tent against a -25-degree night. You've slept on worse slopes than this. Then something above you in the dark shifts the snow, and every instinct you have screams the same single word. Out. You don't unzip the door. You take a knife to the wall of your own tent, and you cut your way out into the blizzard with no boots on your feet. In 9 hours, every one of you will be dead, and the world will argue about why for the next 62 years. To understand how terrifying that is, you have to understand who you are. This is January of 1959, and you are not a tourist. You and your friends are students and graduates of the Ural Polytechnic Institute, some of the most capable winter trekkers in the Soviet Union, led by a meticulous young engineer named Igor Dyatlov. 10 of you set out for a route graded at the highest difficulty for the season. One turned back early, sick, and he will spend the rest of his life as the luckiest man he knows. The other 9 of you go on. You have done this before. You know cold. You know snow. You know exactly how to read a slope. That is the detail that should comfort you, and instead it's the detail that should terrify you. Because whatever happens on this mountain is going to be bad enough to make 9 experts do something that looks, from the outside, completely insane. The mountain already has its name. Dead Mountain. The Mansi people called it that long before you ever set foot on it, long before any of this. And tonight that name is going to stop being folklore and start being a fact. You pitch your single large tent on the open slope of Kolit. It's a calculated choice, the kind experienced hikers make, trading a little exposure for an early start in the morning. You eat. You change into your sleeping clothes, socks and light layers, the way you do every night. Your heavy boots, your coats, your gear, all of it is stacked neatly inside, drying, waiting for morning. You are warm. You are safe. You are 9 friends in a tent telling stories, and you have no idea that you have about an hour left. Here is the first rule of surviving extreme cold, the rule every one of you knows by heart. Do not sweat, and do not panic. At -25 degrees, your shelter is your life. Leaving a warm tent, underdressed, in the dark, in a storm, is not a survival decision. It is a death sentence, and you all know it. Which is exactly what makes what happens next the central mystery. Because something is about to make 9 cold weather experts choose the death sentence outside over whatever is happening inside. Whatever it is, they will decide, in seconds, that the -25-degree blizzard is the safer option. Sit with that. What could possibly be worse than the cold? To people who understand the cold better than almost anyone alive, the answer was sitting above you the entire time, silent, and you couldn't see it. When you cut into a slope to pitch a tent, you change how the snow above you sits. Wind keeps loading more snow onto that slope, packing it into a dense, heavy slab. And that slab can hold for minutes or for hours after you've gone to sleep, balanced, waiting, until it doesn't. This is not the roaring white wall of avalanche from the movies. A slab release on a shallow slope can be a slow, quiet, grinding shift in the dark, a block of concrete hard snow sliding down onto the uphill side of your tent while you sleep. There may be almost no trace of it by morning. And from inside that tent, in the pitch black, with the canvas suddenly caving and a crushing weight coming down on your friends, you do not think the calm word avalanche. You think one word, out, and you cut. In the morning, 60 years from now, searchers will find the proof of how wrong everything went, and it will make no sense to anyone. The tent, cut open from the inside, abandoned. And then the people, scattered down the slope toward the treeline below, underdressed, several with no shoes at all, having walked nearly a mile through the snow away from their only shelter, their only warmth, their only chance. 6 of you will die of hypothermia, the cold doing exactly what the cold does to a body with no coat. But 3 of you will be found with something the cold cannot explain. Crushed chests, a fractured skull, injuries that a doctor will compare to the impact of a car crash, the kind of force you'd expect from a fall off a cliff or a high-speed collision, and yet, almost no external wounds. No broken skin to match the broken bones. Some of you are found later in a ravine, in a kind of snow den you tried to dig. One of you is missing soft tissue from the face, which decades of rumor will turn into something sinister, when the real answer is just time, and snow, and scavengers. But those injuries, that crushing force with no wound. That is the detail that will break every simple explanation for the next 6 decades. How do you get hit like a car crash inside a tent made of canvas? There is one more horror to account for, and it is the cruelest one because it comes from inside your own body. Some of you are found half undressed in the freezing snow, clothing removed, as if you walked into a -25-degree night and decided to take off your coat. For years, this will look like madness or worse. It is neither. It is called paradoxical undressing, and it is real, documented, and well understood. In the final stage of hypothermia, the blood vessels that have been clamped tight to save your core suddenly relax, and a wave of false, burning heat floods through you. You feel like you are on fire. So you tear off your clothes in the snow, certain you are overheating in the last confused minutes of your life. There is another one, too. Terminal burrowing, the dying urge to crawl into a small enclosed space, which is very likely why some of you dug into that ravine. Your own body, at the very end, working against you. Everything searchers find on this mountain, every detail that looks impossible, has a name. You just have to be willing to look at the names. But for 62 years, most people aren't. Because 9 elite hikers cutting their way out of a tent to die barefoot in the snow is a vacuum, and a vacuum fills with ghosts. There are traces of radiation on some clothing, and the rumor machine seizes it. There are strange lights reported in the sky that winter, and people whisper about secret Soviet weapons tests. There are theories about an attack, about something on the mountain, about the unexplained, the paranormal, the impossible. The case file is closed by the authorities with a maddening phrase that the hikers died from a, quote, compelling natural force, and that emptiness lets the mystery grow into one of the most haunting unsolved stories of the century. For 62 years, Dead Mountain keeps its secret, and the silence of 9 people who never got to explain becomes a screen that everyone projects their own monster onto. And think about what the search itself was like, because that is its own quiet horror. When you and your friends don't come back on schedule, it takes days before anyone even begins to worry, and weeks before a search party reaches that slope. They find your tent first, still standing, half buried, cut open from the inside, and inside it your boots, your coats, your food, all neatly stacked, as if 9 people had simply evaporated into the storm. So they follow the trail of you downhill. They find the first of you near a cedar tree at the edge of the forest, beside the ashes of a small fire built with freezing fingers, branches snapped off high up the trunk where someone climbed for wood or for one last look back. They find others in a line between that fire and the tent, faces turned toward the tent, frozen mid-crawl, trying to fight their way back to shelter and not making it. And the last of you they do not find for months, buried deep in a ravine under the snow. Every single body tells one piece of the story. Not one of them tells the whole thing. And then, in 2021, the math finally catches up to the mountain. 2 researchers, Johann Gaum and Alexander Puzrin, publish a study, and they do something the ghost stories never could. They model it. They show that a delayed slab avalanche, a slow release of wind-packed snow onto a tent cut into that specific slope, could produce exactly those rare injuries, the crushing force with little external wounding, the blunt trauma from heavy snow pinning a body against the hard floor of the tent. And in one of the strangest, most beautiful details of the whole story, the snow simulation they used to prove it borrows animation code originally written to render realistic snow for a Disney film. A cartoon snowstorm helps solve a 62-year-old death. And even then, even with the model that fits, the lead researcher is careful to say the thing that real science always says. It can never be fully proven, because no one survived to tell us what actually happened in that tent. So here is what you carry down off Dead Mountain. They did not run from a monster. They ran from physics, in the dark, with 9 seconds to decide, and they made the most rational call that 9 experienced people could possibly make with the information they had, which was almost none. The tent was caving. The weight was coming down. Out was the only word that made sense, and so they cut, and they ran, and the cold did the rest. It took the world 62 years and a supercomputer running movie studio snow code to understand a choice they had to make in the time it takes to read this sentence. That is not failure. That is the mountain being the mountain. Respect it. Read the slope above you before you sleep, not just the one below. Know that your own body can betray you at the very end, and that the calm, Boring, unglamorous rules, don't sweat, don't panic, never cut into a loaded slope, are written in stories exactly like this one. And remember the last, quiet truth that Dead Mountain leaves you with. The mountain is never empty. Keep the fire, keep moving, and never, ever assume the snow above you is asleep.